Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, welcome to the latest episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I am absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined for this episode by none other than Lorraine Woodley, who played Carlene Joseph. Lorraine, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Hello, Neil. Thank you for having me.
No, not at all. Not at all. Don't mention it. What we'll do, Lorraine, is we'll start this episode the way we start every episode. And if you could tell us how you got into acting.
So, I actually joined the Jackie Palmer Stage School, which is in High Wycombe, and there's a few people who were in Grange Hill who actually were on that on that agency, but it was like a dance school, and I didn't go there to kind of act or anything. It was just to sort of start dancing. And Marilyn Phillips, who kind of run the school and the agency, she just started putting me up for auditions and things. And I started just going, and having had not really much experience at all, but just started getting jobs. And I think I remember my first job was in a music video with Sting.
All right.
Yeah.
What was that one for?
It was called I think it was called Love of the Seventh Wave, and he used to be a school teacher, right? He used to be so it's like this weird green screen stuff where you have all these animations and you've got all these kids moving around, and like they moved me behind Sting and he was playing his guitar, and like because they thought I was really good at dancing. Brilliant. Or had like and then it was a really lovely experience, and my first kind of professional experience of being on screen. And so I kind of started from there, just started getting put up for auditions through Jackie Palmer's, and Marilyn just sort of saying, oh, this would be something you'd be really good at. That's how I started getting into it. And I was then doing drama classes there on a Saturday. It's like a weekend school kind of thing. But yeah, I started to that's how I got into it, really. And then
I know. I was looking at some of the stuff you'd done, and you were in Happy Families, children's BBC program. Now, I remember that. So when that came out, I was about 15, right? But I just remember, because I remember the Happy Families books from when I was younger.
Yeah.
And they made every story, didn't they?
Yeah.
And like, you played Lily Lather in the laundry. Now, I watched some of that this week while I was researching.
It's poor, right?
But when I looked at it, I thought the budget for that must have been immense, because those sets were huge. There was that much going on in it. But not only that, you were with Ben Thomas and Annette Badland as well. Ben Thomas was like a kids' TV regular, wasn't he? He was all over it.
Yeah, I think what was groundbreaking about that was it. I don't think it was the first time, but certainly on British television or BBC, they wanted to basically show like mixed heritage families.
Yeah.
So obviously Ben was my dad, and then actually the lady who played my mom, she's quite well-known actress as well.
Yeah, and Annette Badland.
Yeah. And so it was this kind of this sort of just surreal backdrop of the laundry. And then just sort of tentatively bringing in like mixed heritage sort of
but that like you said, that was like that was must have been a big thing for the BBC at the time to be doing that type of thing, certainly to do it on a kids television program.
I think that was one of the things that was kind of groundbreaking about it. But that was my first proper job, and that was, I don't think I was great in that, to be honest. But
Brilliant. And then you were in something called Sydney's Chair, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Which, when I looked through the synopsis, was about Sidney Poitier.
It was it was based around the time that Sidney Poitier was filming To Serve with Love with Lulu, and it was based in Wapping in East London. And I think it did win a Channel 4 film award.
All right.
But it was again about like sort of interracial relationships, and obviously To Serve with Love was all about when, you know, Sidney Poitier's character gets brought home, and you know the kind of reaction to somebody bringing somebody out of your cultural kind of home into your own home, and then the reaction around that, and sort of breaking down sort of I guess stereotypes, or breaking down just the way that people think that people are without actually having met them. But yeah, it you know, I was a part of this family who the dad was a boxer, or he used to be a boxer, and he was always talking about his past, and you know, always kind of holding on, clinging on to that kind of part of his life when life wasn't very, for him at the time, very successful, or he was just trying to keep the family together, but sort of reflecting on past success, and just that
So
was
was it a true story?
the director, he sort of loosely based it around his life.
Right.
He wrote and directed it, and yeah, he I think he trained at the National Film and Television School in Beaconsfield.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, so then we'll move on to talking about Grange Hill. How did that come about then?
Basically, I'd done a few bits of I'd done an odd episode here and there of different bits and bobs, and I was studying drama GCSE, and then you know, you're kind of, I've never really had like a series under my belt or anything like that. I'd had a few jobs that I'd landed, but then either money was pulled from it or something had happened and they didn't come through. So the opportunity to go and audition for Grange Hill was like a big thing. And I think I had like, I went up 2 or 3 times, and you go up to the green room with loads of people, and I met Stephen Andrew, who was the producer on Grange Hill for a little while, and he was quite forward thinking and quite I don't know, I sort of got really drawn towards him. So yeah, when I went up for, I think, one of the recalls, I took some friends with me, and I was just like, I always felt like I hadn't, you know, you always kind of second guess, or did I do that well, or you know, but the character and what she was standing for, her values and her beliefs, kind of sort of aligned with my thinking. So I was like, right, if this is gonna work, this is probably this part. And yeah, so then I got a call to say I got the job, and I was super excited, and just over the moon. Like I was, you know, and the kind of ironic thing about it is that when I was younger, my mum wouldn't let me watch Grange Hill.
Right, okay.
So then to get a job, landing a job as one of the principal characters was like, you know, this is very weird. So I'd actually, I obviously had watched Grange Hill when I could, without her knowing, when I was younger. But that's how it came about. And I think the first time we just had improvisations with other actors who were, you know, in the room, just to see how we responded in the space. And then we were given like scripts to read through and stuff like that. And and that was it.
Brilliant. Okay. So you were a fan of Grange Hill when you were allowed to watch?
When I was on the side,
when you'd gone
undercover.
round to your friends to do your homework. Okay. So you know, what was it like then going and going into a room and being with these people who you had never seen on television before?
So I was so excited to be a part of something like that, and traveling up to Boreham Wood, because that's where it was, Elstree, and obviously they filmed Top of the Pops then at the time there as well, and EastEnders and everything. So it was a crazy, like, weird experience of seeing all these kind of quite famous people, and you know, lots of pop stars, you know, milling about and stuff. And but it was I don't, you know, at the time I don't think I was as phased as I probably would have been now, because I think when you're young, you've got this like, oh, I'm just going in, I'm going to do this job. And I actually really enjoyed like having the challenge of learning all of the lines, and I know that I think when I went into the rehearsal room, because I knew all my lines, because basically the way it was set up is that you had 2 weeks rehearsal and then 4 weeks filming. You filmed in blocks, so you'd film 4 episodes over 4 weeks and 2 weeks of rehearsal. And in a quite like sterile environment where they've just got like, sort of it marked out on the floor and but I think so my character Carlene Joseph is based on, they chose the name from one of the location managers called Carlene King. And I remember her saying to me, she goes, you've kind of given everyone a bit of a nudge because you come in and you know all your lines in the first day of rehearsal. Do you know what I mean? Like sort of shake up the the kind of people who've been there in a lull for all these years. And I was like, no, I know my lines. I'm inside out. I know them inside out. I was that kind of person. To start off with, who was just like, I was on top of everything. I was on my A game in terms of wanting to get the best out of the experience. And so I loved being there, and sort of certainly the first year just tried to soak everything up, and felt like, gosh, this could be something I do in the future. But yeah, it was hard as well studying for my A levels at the time. It was a bit of a challenge in that sense. But I just really enjoyed
Brilliant.
the
Brilliant.
experience.
So you joined in series 20, it was, and it went on air in 97. And Carlene was a sixth former, so Carlene had never sort of been there before.
No.
And the first sort of things that you were involved in was the amnesty group.
Yeah.
And it was during, and the first time we see Carlene was during the assembly about Anne Louis, who was the political prisoner that the amnesty group.
That's the monologue I learned.
And were you given sort of like any training or teaching about that sort of thing, or was it just there's your script?
Yeah, literally that. Here's your script. Off you go. But I think, and the issue is like if this was now, obviously you've got access to like the internet, which would tell you everything, like at that time, I think our school just had some computers in them, like in the library, you could find a computer, which is like really dodgy, it took a really long time and you had to dial up and whatever. But no, they're I guess with the directors, because they changed directors of each block, they would kind of talk about the kind of sort of motivation, but they never sort of gave us any kind of contextual understanding or any kind of anything to sort of underpin it. But I guess I understood what Amnesty International was, and that I was sort of like, it was like a performance art piece where it was like an installation where I was acting as if I was this person who was locked in this place. So I kind of understood that much. Hopefully that came across.
Brilliant.
I was doing, I don't know.
And it's fair to say that when Carlene first came, she was she liked mixing it up a little bit, didn't she? Like she wasn't backward in coming forward. Like there's a bit where Carlene and Lauren, who were like peas in a pod, weren't they? Like Carlene and Lauren, like they saw Dennis out shopping with Claire for new clothes to impress Lucy. That's what that was. But they knew nothing was going on. But Carlene still told Lucy that she'd seen them out shopping together. And Lauren actually
stirring it up.
Yeah, Lauren actually says to Carlene, "Are you staring?" And Carlene says, "Yeah, I am."
Complete contradiction to
And you sort of mentioned this previously as well. Like there was an A-level history class, and she was with Mrs. Holmes, played by Rachel Bell. Rachel Bell been on here, like what a woman! Like
so lovely.
Yeah,
she's so lovely.
Really, really is. And she'd done an essay for her, and she was told the essay was very good, but she'd lost marks because she'd focused too much on like black cultural references, and Carlene felt that the black history was being ignored, and Lauren was trying to like make Carlene see Mrs. Holmes' side of the argument, but Carlene sort of like told Lauren that she was as ignorant as Mrs. Holmes. So for me, it's not that it's difficult to understand, but things like that have never sort of been prevalent like in my life. But did you feel that like school was showing that side, that sort of thing as well? Like,
Yeah, I mean, so what's really interesting about that is I'd kind of forgotten about that moment.
mhm,
But what is really strange is how that counterpoints to kind of what's happening now. Because I am a teacher.
right,
I work in in an art school. So a few years ago when I was creating a piece based on the Windrush, and it was just before the Windrush scandal broke, and we had these discussions amongst the class, and we're trying to work out what resonated with different types of people. But within the class, there was still people who were like really shocked about the involvement of Black Caribbean people, particularly in terms of fighting in a part of the war, or how they rebuilt Britain. It was like there's still the lack of kind of or the lack of curriculum space,
yeah,
or was really minimal. And even like, so the kind of idea of like Lauren being kind of like dismissive of Carlene's feelings
uh-huh,
about the way that Mrs. Holmes sort of was undermining what she was trying to say, or trying to include in her essay, happens regularly. In
yeah,
my experience, even as a teacher, when I'm discussing it with other people who are from a similar background, um, people have all these different perspectives on kind of where the emphasis should be.
yeah,
And what's really difficult is it's like with any kind of group of people, like no one, two people are going to think in the same
mhm,
way. And it's important that you've got like a cross section of ideas.
yeah,
But I still think within the curriculum, it's even narrow. And even since 2020, there have been like advances. Like I know that in
mhm,
history curriculum, there's a whole thing that's done on migration. So you've got a little bit of that history, Black British history incorporated into that. But I just feel like I feel like I still feel like it's still hidden in a way.
yeah,
And um I don't think I think if it needs to just be understood and recognized by lots of different people
mhm,
as a part of British history, rather than it being a add-on or sort of an optional unit, because I
yeah,
think it then encourages an understanding of how our society is so like integrated,
yeah,
and that people have contributed to the development from all different cultural
yeah,
backgrounds. Because it creates a level of understanding without sort of, there's been so much stuff that's been going on, which it's been really difficult for lots of different people.
uh-huh,
But ultimately, if you don't know about someone's contribution and all you hear is about X, Y, and Z, which is from a negative kind of slant,
yeah,
then then that's all you know, and you think that someone is taking something away from you. But actually, if you understand that
yeah,
that group of people have been in your society and a part of building
mhm,
um you know the country, and just are a part of the community, then the way that you think when you hear different bits of information that people kind
mhm,
of I don't know, illuminate or just like kind of use to their advantage, then you can kind of dismiss that. Because if it's coming from your grounding in education, then you know what I mean?
yeah,
What's really difficult is when it's non-existent, and then we only hear about that group of people from like a standpoint of, oh, slavery or whatever it happens to
yeah,
be. There's lots of different groups of people in the UK. And I guess if your curriculum doesn't reflect like the actual history, then
yeah,
it
yeah,
is it's a really hard one. But
yeah,
it's like if you're taking out certain parts, then I feel like you're doing a disservice. Like you're only educating people and you're controlling what people know. And
yeah,
it's important for all groups of people, because then there's a greater understanding
yeah,
amongst people, I think. That was a
yeah.
long-winded
No,
answer.
no. I mean that's fair
Um,
enough because that like
Yeah.
That was what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's a hard one because I think it's a really difficult thing to talk about and articulate feelings. Like
yeah,
it's really hard to describe how it feels sometimes when people are dismissive of something you want to express, or particularly when it's someone from your cultural background
uh-huh.
who opposes what you think,
Yeah,
or kind of challenges it. And in a way, um, it can really kind of, I don't know, it's a really challenging
because
when that happens.
it can cause rifts, can't it? You know, they can sort of
Yeah.
be divides and things. And
Yeah. And
I,
and it's okay to disagree, I think,
yeah,
but it's also, you know, I think just having one person sort of being able to say that, well, because I'm from your cultural background and I say no, then that should be the way it is. Like I think amongst a group of people, doesn't matter who you are, you'll have 10 or 12 or 15 people who have different opinions about the same thing, even though they might be from the same cultural background. It's like it's the danger of a single story. Like,
yeah,
you need to have more than one story and more than one perspective, whichever community you're in, because it just is. It's just important,
yeah.
not,
Because
one voice doesn't represent all kind of thing.
yeah, I think with that, Lauren was sort of like trying to make it an easy life for Carlene, wasn't she? She was trying to say, look, this will be easy,
Yeah.
but Carlene had their beliefs. She had their, her standpoint. And she was like, well, no, it's not right. It's not fair. And it was Mrs. Holmes that had said it, and there was quite a bit of back and forth between Carlene and Mrs. Holmes, because if we go back to the amnesty group, they were having another meeting, and they were kicked out of the room that they were in by Mrs. Holmes, much to the annoyance of Carlene, I have to say, who gave Mrs. Holmes a proper death stare on the way out of that room. And I've watched it a couple of times and I think, oh, so I'm so glad I wasn't on the end of that night, to be honest. Did you have to practice that much?
No, no. Do you know what? It's so weird. Like you're putting me to shame because I can't remember half of the stuff. But when you're talking about it, it really does resonate with stuff that parallels in my life.
Right?
I've had a few times where there's certain things that have happened. I think I think I probably would have appreciated those storylines and those kind of conflicts a bit more since I've grown up, and I kind of sort of much more aware of that kind of I don't know, just sense of people kind of trying to not give you your space,
Yeah.
or trying to limit your voice, or trying to narrow certain things. And I know that I've had a few experiences where I've had to stand up for myself, and I've had people trying to say, maybe you should kind of leave this one. And it's been to my detriment. It caused a lot of problems. But I
Right.
feel like in that way, remember earlier when I was saying that I feel like Carlene like sort of aligns with who I
Yeah.
am. This idea that if you don't stand up for yourself in one space, it's, or happen in another space. And, obviously you have to choose your battles, but when they're important, they're important.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll let her
Yeah.
know how I feel.
No, I mean that's fair enough, right? And that I love that the group then they still got their meeting going on. Instead of then talking about Anne Louise' rights, they started talking about their own rights as a group and how they should be able to do something. And it was something that Carlene seemed really pleased with. And Carlene then led the group to speak to Mr. Robson about their own rights. But then they then found out that Anne Louise had been released from prison, which they were all really pleased about. But then they then later found out that Anne Louise had sadly passed away,
Yeah.
crossing the Himalayas into Nepal. And I just think that was I don't like to say, but like an easy way for the writers to sort of, let's move on from Anne Louise now.
Yeah, let's give it some airtime and
Yeah.
then take it
um,
away.
and Lauren had told Carlene that her brother had told Lauren not to have any white friends, listen to their music or anything like that. And Carlene said that he had the right to think like that, and also that Lauren was too naive. The sort of thing that we talked about. But the thing about that is Lauren's brother was played by Ashley
Ashley
Walters.
Walters, yeah, Asher D.
Ashley D, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea what Ashley Walters was going to become at the time?
No, I did not. I did not. And all I remember is because at the time I used to smoke, right? I used to smoke cigarettes. And I
Right.
remember Ashley was like, why are you smoking cigarettes, Lorraine? And I was thinking he was such a like, he was like, what are you doing to yourself? And then he was complete, like he was young though, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So yes. No, I had no idea. And the strangest thing is, a friend of me sent like a recording shot of Louis Theroux series the other day because
All
there's a
right.
shot where they're doing the focus on Ashley Walters, and there's a scene with me and Melanie who played Lauren and Ashley, and
Brilliant.
someone's like, "Look, you're on TV." Um, I was like, "Oh gosh, I remember the day."
Brilliant.
But I mean, I think that point that you were bringing up about the idea of her being too naive, I think that is definitely a thing that you can be in a world where you want to believe that everything is good and that you're living in a world where those kind of the, the space that you're existing in isn't set up to be against you, or I think what the character was trying to do, but in a what Ashley's character was trying to do, but in a sort of maybe an extreme way, was
Yeah.
going, you need to make sure that you're with other people who know who you are, and they're treating you in a way that is based on who you are. And the thing is, because I know that later on a storyline comes when Lauren gets strip searched,
Uh-huh.
and that's a big thing that's happened. The reality of being somebody who is Black is, and you can sort of shine over it until it's sort of way in your face. Even if you are that person who is Black, you can still go, my reality is this, and I don't think that this is happening. Oh, they're treating me this way, but that's because they've had this type of day. But when you start accumulating all these different experiences, and you're like, there's no way that that could be any other reason
Right.
than
Yeah.
because of who I am,
Yeah.
and that's the same thing that happened with Lauren, like, and Carlene getting strip searched. They were underage, and obviously that's quite in the forefront of our minds to like Child
Hmm.
Q, which happened a few years ago. Like it's happening constantly, that type of thing where
Yeah.
young, especially Black girls, are being sort of I don't know, I can't remember the sort of language now, but just looking at as if they're older, they're being treated in different ways, and they're just sort of being managed not as young children. There's
Uh-huh.
being seen adultification, I think it's called. And yeah, and I think sometimes, and I wrote like a piece actually
Right.
last year, which was called Face Up, which is and the idea that not everything can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless you face up to it. And that's
Yeah.
like a James Baldwin quote. And it's like it's just that idea that you can live, and I can kind of admit to that, growing up and feeling like there's not that much prejudice, there's not much of this, there's not much of that, and then getting older and kind of just sort of removing those lenses and actually seeing what's really going on.
Hmm.
And it's such a weird balance between the character that Carlene was and the person I was, and the time it took for me to kind of go, actually, I do need to actually face up to the reality of this.
Yeah.
It is real. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? If you don't, in a way, it's like if you live under that kind of guise of not facing up to it,
Hmm.
if you are aware of it, then you almost, is it less harmful, or is it, or are you more defensive?
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like how do you manage, how do you navigate all of that? And I think I think a part of sort of I know everyone uses the word unpack, but a part of analyzing all of that growing up in that time, and um is how it kind of can stunt your growth or your confidence of who
Hmm.
you are. And that's why I think Ashley's character was sort of trying to say, you have to surround yourself with these types of people because it empowers you, rather than you being surrounded by someone who might treat you slightly differently, or the people that you hang, they might not, but
Yeah,
it's a possibility, and it can go both ways. But I think, yeah, there's different
yeah,
perspectives on that and what that
yeah,
can do. So yeah.
yeah. I mean, you've just mentioned the storyline with Lauren,
Mm.
and the police, and that was sort of, I would say, sort of like your first sort of major storyline there,
Mm.
because Lauren and Carlene were going to a tramp. It was a tramps and tarts party.
Yeah, it was a
Um,
fancy dress party.
yeah, so they
Yeah.
decided to walk there, but got lost. And to them, it was all sort of rather innocent. So, a guy came up to them and they asked them where the party was. They showed them an invitation, but the viewer sees it from the perspective of the view of the police, they're talking about it. His money just changed hands, and in the end, he tells them where they're going. But he also stops them and gives them a card because he's obviously a dealer or a pimp or something.
Yeah.
But then the police turn up, and they're all arrested.
Interested. Yeah.
And so to Carly, we see like the interview, Carly pleading their innocence, but the police, they didn't seem to believe her. And she said that they were going to a tramps and tarts party, and she actually says, I'm a tart," as in like, I'm going to a tramps and tarts
Yeah.
party. And the policeman said, "Well, you said it." Now, just that bit, I thought, in a kids' TV program was quite shocking as well, But showing the fact that kids that age do go to parties and they do go to, fancy dress, and they can easily be caught up. But then they thought that Lauren and Carlene had been soliciting, but also thought that Lauren had drugs on her because they'd seen her put whatever the guy had given it, even though it was only a card, into her bag. And Lauren was strip searched.
Yeah.
Carlene didn't get the same treatment. And Carlene also didn't know what had happened to Lauren because she comes into school and was like, "Oh, did you hear about what happened to us at the weekend?" And Lauren was like, obviously dealing with that and didn't know how to tell anyone. And Carlene sort of said that, she'd been a bit hard on Lucy because Lucy hadn't turned up to go to the party, and, that, she didn't need, Lucy didn't need friends turning on her. Because obviously Lucy had all her own storylines with, like her mum dying and her dad meeting someone else and things like that. And Carlene then invited Lucy to a party at Lauren's house because there was this thing about her mum and dad had gone away for
Yeah.
ages, but Lucy found a note that had been taken for it the week before when the girls had gone to the Tramps and Tarts party. And Lucy thought that the party at Lauren's was going to be a Tramps and Tarts party and dressed up virtually, in the same way the girls had, like proper Grange Hill mix up. She turned up quite inappropriately dressed, and it was Carlene was the friend you needed in that situation because it was her that sort of covered her up, gave her a coat, and was calming Lauren down because Lauren was worried that the party was going to be getting out of hand because Andy's mates had all turned up and there was just hundreds of people in this house. And then there's sort of like an interesting conversation going on then between Lucy and Carlene because Lucy felt uncomfortable at the party being the only white person there. And Carlene said she understood, but just found it funny because obviously Lucy in that situation was in the minority. And then one of Andy's mates came and sort of called Lucy a racist. But can you also remember what he called Carlene?
No.
So he called Carlene a Malteser.
A
A
Malteser.
Malteser.
Yeah.
Um, Now, again, is that sort of thing that you've experienced in the past?
Yeah. Well, so on lots of different levels, I've experienced. So I I grew up in a village called Chinner, which is in Oxfordshire,
Right,
and there were only, I think, three black families,
right,
and one of them was mine.
right.
One of them was another family who we didn't know, and then another family who was my uncle and his family, so we were related to them. So my experience of like growing up in an environment where I always kind of was in the minority, like massively, only black child in my primary school, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
in terms of the idea of being called a coconut or a Malteser or anything like that, or being or having people say to me, "Stay black,"
Yeah.
you know, all of those types of things have occurred in one way or another throughout growing up because most of my friends growing up in my area, all the people I went to school with, even at secondary school, are all white, and I'm really close friends with lots of those people now. And sort of trying to place my identity and work out where I sat with certain things has been really challenging because the alternate to that is obviously being an actor and going up for jobs. And then because of like I'm a bit more London now because I've been a long time in London, but my accent, like going for castings like on the bill or different things like that, they couldn't quite match up how I was speaking to the types of characters they were trying to cast me
Yeah.
And I even got a job for a voiceover for the army, and they didn't use my voiceover because they said I didn't sound black enough.
Wow.
I've had a lot of different experiences, and then I've had other people being like, I haven't had anyone directly call me a Maltese or a coconut, but I've had that feeling
Right.
when I've been out or if I've had a certain group of friends, and it's really difficult because I guess coming and moving to London was really empowering in a way because I suddenly started to not feel like the minority in a
Right.
space. And it's not that my friends ever made me feel like that, but because you have to always kind of adjust or you feel like you're never quite fitting in and you can't quite articulate what it is. But whenever I had sort of racist experiences, and I'd go back into my circle of friends, I never felt like I could communicate that because I just didn't think they would understand um, uh, or be able to just explain how I feel, or not even explain how I feel, but just have someone understand how it feels.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember a specific incident where I'd gone shopping and I was going to Uxbridge shopping centre, and you stop at some lights, and I literally had a group of boys pull up by the side of me and wind down the window, and they were just shouting the N-word at me, and I couldn't move because of the red light, and I couldn't move, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't move, and it just kept on happening, and people could see what was happening in the cars behind, but it just didn't. I don't know what anyone would have done, but then I sort of got into the car park, and I was like, I can't even shop now, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Just felt like I don't know, like it just couldn't do anything, and and it was a last minute thing. I thought, oh, I'm gonna pull over into Uxbridge, get a present for my friend because I'm going to her birthday in Brill or wherever it is near where I grew up. And when I got to the house, I couldn't tell anybody, and I was
Yeah.
feeling really like obviously shaken up by it all. And I think eventually I did tell one friend and they sort of listened. But it's that kind of thing of like, I think, yeah, it's hard because um, I don't think anyone can really understand, but I feel like that. So from both sides of growing up in an area where you kind of the reality for you is different for you than it is for them,
Yeah.
and also just reflecting back on past experiences where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was treated like that.
Yeah.
But it was kind of you sort of narrow yourself in those spaces without realizing it. And then you come to London, you see people who might have been growing up in an area with other people who are from the same background of them. And also like quite like multicultural, but there's a freedom in the way they speak, or there's a power in the value in their
Yeah.
voice, or just expectations or what they go and grab is different. Like it's just different, and it's weird because I played this character who was very strong-minded and very strong-willed, and I am that sort of person, particularly for other groups of people, people who are disadvantaged or marginalized in all sorts of areas in all sorts of ways. But as an individual person, growing up, that power and advocacy for myself was diminished because of those experiences
Yeah,
or in a certain environment.
yeah.
So it's a really strange one. Actually, it's so weird because I don't think I would have reflected in this way unless you'd asked me to do this podcast. And actually now it's made me go, like, I really want to go back and look at those,
Yeah,
because to be honest, these storylines are quite they're still relevant.
yeah, definitely.
They're
I mean,
still relevant.
that's the thing. You say you didn't think you'd be saying like this, but that's what Carlene's character was. You
Yeah.
know, she was. I'm not going to say militant, but she stood up for what she believed in, and
Yeah.
she had her own belief. But what was good, sort of, about this storyline and things around it was that it showed people that everyone can have prejudices. It's not limited. There's prejudice. Everywhere, and the fact that Andy's mates were there and were saying these things to Lucy and were saying them to Carly as well, and it just shows the fact that prejudices aren't limited to one type of person, are they?
No.
That was the thing. Like, and we will go back, going back to that party. The police then turned up and asked them to, they really only asked them to turn the noise down, but the policewoman that came was the same policewoman who had strip searched Lauren, and Lauren then kicked everyone out the house because she still hadn't told Carlene or anyone what had happened at this point. And Carlene was always sort of asking Lauren to go and do stuff after school, but Lauren was always making excuses as to why she couldn't go. And it was like sort of quite, obviously quite sad. She told Mrs. Holmes. That was the one person she told. And eventually, Mrs. Holmes told Lauren's parents what had happened as well. And it sort of all, it came out in the open then. But one other thing Carlene was involved with was the school magazine. But if you remember, so when I was at school, a school magazine was, this is what we're doing, this is what's happened in the school, this is, chess clubs on this day, footballs on this day. But the Grange Hill School magazine wasn't going to be like that. Can you remember what the school magazine was going to be like?
I think I'd be lying if I said you.
So they tried to make it sort of like a teen magazine, like just 17 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Complete with a male pin-up.
God.
But obviously it became sort of too spicy for the school and it was eventually cancelled. And the last thing that Carlene was involved in, and this carried over into the next series, was when she found Joanna passed out in the toilets, and Joanna had started drinking heavily. And Carlene had been trying to help her, but Joanna didn't want to know. But eventually, Joanna asked Carlene to help her, stop drinking and get dry. And just before we move on to the next series, I'll just ask you a sort of few questions. We've mentioned, the likes of Melanie, who played Lauren, and obviously Fiona Wade played Joanna Day. But who would you say were like your sort of best friends?
So I say Mel, who played Lauren, and Alan Cave, who played Dennis, because you know why? We lived near each other, right? So he lived in Great Missenden, and he used to have his moped or his motorbike. I don't think it was a motorbike. I don't know. He'll kill me for saying that. But we used to, like, I don't know, we traveled a similar route, and sometimes I'd just pick him up. Do you know what I mean? He'd park his bike and then I'd meet him at this pub and we'd get in together and travel back. And I actually had a message from him because my dad had this old BMW, like black BMW 325i, right, which is like an old classic now. And I posted a picture because my dad still got this car. He doesn't drive it, but he's like, your dad still hasn't got this car. So we're friends from afar. And then I didn't have any storylines with Ian Robertson, but we became friends, and I was friends with Ian for a really long time. I used to go and see his like any plays he was in and stuff like that. And I guess it's probably the last sort of 8 years or so, or 9 years that we've sort of been in touch, but not as
Yeah.
much. And then I've recently sort of reacquainted with Amy
Oh
Phillip.
yeah.
She's got a different surname now, and she's like artistic director of Lantern
Yeah,
Theatre.
Amy's been on here. Yeah, she's
Yeah, has
great, Amy.
she?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so she we sort of ignited our friendship again when we went to see Francesca's play, all of us at the
All right.
National.
Yeah.
And we sort of hung out a bit there. And then since then she's been coming to see some stuff that I've either choreographed I basically work at the Brit School, and so
All right.
she's come to see a couple of things, and I think she saw Sweeney last year, and she brought her husband as well.
Uh-huh.
And well, I haven't actually been to Land. I have to go to her theatre and see what's going on there. But
Yeah.
and who else? I think I've had a couple of messages, like we haven't managed to meet up, from Tracy Davis, who I think played Claire.
Yeah.
And there was a guy called Nitsan Sharon he wasn't a regular, but yeah, I used to hang out with Stephen Hammett a little bit,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I guess yeah,
Yeah. Brilliant.
it
Okay.
fizzled out,
No,
but yeah.
that's cool. So we move on then to the next series when Carly was in the upper sixth. Was that always going to be the plan that you would
Yeah,
do the
just
2 years?
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always just 2 years.
Okay. And just said that Carlene had offered this help to Joanna, and Joanna was sort of like taking her up on it. And Joanna was saying that she could like now handle talking about the drink. And thanks to Carlene, because Carlene had put her in touch with Drinkline. But later in the day, though, Carlene found Joanna asleep in the common room. Joanna said she hadn't been feeling well, and this it starts off quite innocent, to be honest. But then
Mm.
Joanna borrows £10 from Carlene to buy her mum some earrings. And when Carlene asked her if she could see the earrings, Joanna said, "Oh, I must have left them in the shop." And Carlene then offered to go with Joanna to go and get them, and she said, "Oh, I'll go later." And she sort of kept making excuses and going. And maybe you start thinking, is everything as it seems? Like Joanna did then show Carlene some earrings, but she'd actually nicked them from the shop. She'd pinched them, and
Mm.
she gave Carlene the £10 back, but she'd actually borrowed the £10 from her brother to buy a present. And you start thinking, is everything, what's going on? And Carlene was actually getting a little bit suspicious of Joanna here, and she actually drunk some of her orange juice. And obviously Joanna was like, gets angry with her and storms out. Joanna was still drinking, but that time she hadn't been. And it all then came to a head. I don't remember that, when there was a karaoke night at the cafe, in Ray's Cafe.
Kelly K. George.
Yeah.
Yes.
When Joanna collapsed and ran out, and Carlene went looking for her but couldn't find her. And then she'd actually collapsed outside in the bins and ended up in hospital. And she then admitted to like her mum and that she'd been drinking for over a year. She was an alcoholic. And then she eventually told Carlene that she'd never spoken to Drinkline. She'd never, even though Carlene had been trying to help her out. But she did also say that she was grateful to Carlene for trying to help her. And Carlene went with Joanna into school, and they had like, I don't know if you remember, like a little bit of like not an intervention as such, but it was set up like that because obviously she just went in to tell everyone sort of what had been going on and what she'd been going through, and that she was leaving Grange Hill. Now, the thing I liked about Carlene in that storyline was that as we said, she'd started out a bit of a mixer. She had a viewpoints on things, and she wasn't afraid to speak up for him. She wasn't backward in coming forward, but we saw a very different side to Carlene here, I think, because the Carlene in the early days would have loved telling everyone what Joanna was going through. Oh, there's a girl, she never stops thinking, all that type of thing. But it was just nice that there was this other side to it where she was helping she was helping Joanna out. She wasn't like talking out of turn about it and stuff. And I just thought that was quite a nice thing to say, especially when Joanna left and she says to her, "I'm going to miss you," to Carlene there. However, let's just go back to Carlene's angry side, shall we say? Angry is probably the wrong word to use. Probably not the correct word to use. Mrs. Holmes had told Mrs. Holmes again. Now, hold on. You've said how nice Rachel Bell was.
Yeah.
What was the sort of the relationship be like between the actors who played the adults and the actors who played the kids?
I think it was a good one. It was quite nice. I think Rachel was always really lovely and just kind of kept it kind of like quite light conversation. I remember getting on quite well with Lee Corns.
Yeah, he's another one who's been on here.
Yeah. So, giving lots of advice. And then the guy who played Mr. Robson, Stuart, he was really lovely. And he was just very complimentary about like how when when you're young, you kind of there's not the worry or the kind of you're just getting on with the scenes and it just happens. And I think I just always remember that I remember being quite fond of the adults. It wasn't like them and us at all. It was just we're all actors and we were just doing the job. And it just like quite nice, really, giving us lots of advice. And there was another lady, I can't remember, she had kind of straight hair, a white lady who was a teacher as well. And I remember
Sally, was it Sally?
Yeah, Dagan. Maybe she was sort of talking about, because we were talking about like whether we were going to drama school or not, and I was just like, I'm not sure I'd survive in that environment. And she's like, oh no, she was just sort of saying for her it wasn't a very positive experience, and perhaps thinking of going down another route and that kind of stuff. So yeah, they were just like friendly advice. They were like obviously much more experienced than we were. But yeah, even like it was lovely working with everybody on there. But the teachers were the people
because I imagine you would have spent a lot of time with them because you weren't chaperones at that point.
I wasn't chaperone. So yeah, we were just like we were basically in the same spaces. And so it was nice.
Okay, so we'll go back. So Mrs. Holmes had told the sixth formers that the common room was going to be turned into a study area for GCSE and A-level students. So obviously Carlene wasn't standing for this and went on the bounce to Mr. Robson about it. And then she led a sit-in protest in the common room, telling Mr. Robson and Mrs. Holmes that they wanted their own space and they weren't going anywhere until they had one. Well, Mr. Robson then said, well, we will find you somewhere. And he did find them a room, but it was a lot smaller than the common room. And Carlene sort of said that she knew the staff wouldn't keep their promise to find a decent room to Mr. Robson, and sort of gave him not as much of a death stare as she'd given Mrs. Holmes previously, but she still, she wasn't happy, and she let it known that she wasn't happy. And then the rest of that series then was all, because you weren't in that series as much as your first series, but the rest of that series then was all about Dennis. You mentioned that Alan before, who's also been on here as well, just name dropping me Grange Hill mates there, about getting Dennis getting the compensation from the accident. There was all sorts of talk about him going to Australia, and he treated the sixth formers to a night out in the limo and in a club. And then there was a surprise going away party for him as well. And things like that. Although when you were, your scenes, you were in sixth form, so you didn't have the school uniform. When it was scenes like that, and when you were it was a party and you were getting dressed up and all stuff like that. I mean, it must have been great just filming those different things as well and being able to get dressed up as well. What the main thing I remember about being in sixth form was those types of things. It was always out every Saturday night,
I remember at my school, because I went to a school called Lord Bill's, it's Lord Williams is in Tame, and we used to have our own sixth form centre area called the Plumber Block, which we're really, really fond of. But yeah, in sixth form, lower sixth and upper sixth, we always had like a prom type thing, and getting dressed up for that, and sneaking alcohol in or whatever. That was great times. And I remember the nightclub that we filmed in. I didn't know if it was for Dennis's going away, but I remember really bizarrely, I don't know why, but Face magazine was a big magazine at the time, and they came in and interviewed us while we were on set there, and that was quite nice. And yeah, all of those moments were good times. Actually, they've you sort of forget about those times, but they were great and they were lovely, and everyone who I worked with was I never had any real negative times there.
I mean, like you're saying there about like the going outs and stuff. Our sixth form, so we had one room. We had a common room and we had a study room. But every Saturday night, right, it was like the common room had been lifted into. There's a club around the corner from it. It used to be around the corner from here called the Kiss, and it was like the common room had been lifted from school into there. Everyone sort of had like their own little space. You knew where to go and find people in there. It was great. It was such a good night out. But that was like, but then like you had, I'll never ever forget our head of sixth form coming in and saying, "Oh, we've got this tickets to an under 18s night in a nightclub. Does anyone fancy it?" And no, everyone was like looking at him thinking, "Does he not know how old we're all like 17 and 18?" Because not one person responded to him. Like it was unreal. Like, but yeah, so
yeah.
Going back there, like Dennis had this surprise party, and not only did Dennis leave, but obviously Carlene and the rest of the sixth formers
all of us were leaving. Yeah.
So, how did you feel about leaving?
I think it was it the 21st year? So we knew, obviously there was talk about Grange Hill moving up to Liverpool to be filmed. So
already then, wow.
Yeah, I think there was. I don't know whether it was happening then or there was whispers of it, or it just didn't feel the same. I don't know. There's like I felt like there was a wind down happening before. I don't know. They were introducing younger characters during that year. I remember that was quite funny storylines. I can't remember, but
so like the double dare gang and people like that arrived by then.
Yeah, they were hilarious. I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but it's happening. And yeah, I think it was a weird feeling because it was so nice to have some kind of like be involved in something where you got to work with a different director every 4 episodes, and that was a lovely experience. And it was kind of like what happens next for us as young people or young actors. And I know that some people were like, well, this is going to be it for me. It's not my sort of thing. And for me, I didn't really know where I was going or what I was going to do, because I was always loved like dancing and choreographing. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember Stephen Andrew, I've still got the book. I can see it. I think it's still on my bookshelf somewhere, but it was like a career in acting. He gave us these books, and Forward by Judi Dench and all that kind of stuff about like your next steps kind of thing. And it felt strange to leave, but I always knew it was only going to be for a certain amount of time, so it wasn't like it was a disappointment. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, you're being written out, or it was always that kind of thing, and not really knowing what I was going to go on to do, or but I still had a passion for acting, and I actually loved. I think if I'd really understood myself a bit more, I probably would have gone, right, I want to go and do a directing course, or I want to go and do this or something.
But I mean, like, it's hard at that age, isn't it, to know what you want to do. I mean, I'll be honest. I probably said this one here before. I'm 49 and I still don't know what I want to do.
Yeah, and it's so hard, isn't it? Because also, like, even if you want to be in the arts, even though I sort of work, like I am artistic in what I do, it's like being able to kind of afford to be in theatre
Yeah.
is a bigger is the other kind of boundary really at the moment,
Yeah.
particularly like if you want to step out into doing any of that stuff. The things that you really love are generally not viable, especially if you have a family and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's just very, very particularly now
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
challenging.
Okay. Now, whenever I'm putting an episode of the podcast out, I always do a guest to guest competition. I put picture clues online and people try and work out who it's going to be. And then the first person that gets it gets to ask the following guest a question. So I've got a question here from someone called Harry Worley. And Harry has asked, have you ever sat down and rewatched Grange Hill with either your partner or your kids and watched the episodes Grange Hill that you were in and sort of what was their opinion of it?
Never.
Right. any particular reason for that?
No, do you know what? I never ever like watching myself at all. I don't even like hearing my own voice. Do you know what? I don't think my daughter, and she's like 8, she's nearly 9. I don't think she really knew what mummy used to do or was doing. She knows that I dance and I choreograph and I direct, but she doesn't know anything about the acting side.
Right.
My husband knew because he's known me since I was like 16, so or even before, younger than that, so he does know. But no, I've never sat down. To be honest, I don't even know how to get access to
Right. So at the minute, if you're going to do it legally, we've got to push legally.
Yeah.
ITVX Premium. It's on there on the ITVX Premium. I'm sure there are ways that you can watch it illegally as well, but I'm not at liberty to type those.
Okay, ITVX Premium. I'm making a note of it. I'm making a note.
Okay, so did you carry on acting then?
After Grange, yeah. So I went on to do. I did go on and do like I think I went on to do an HND, and then I converted that into doing like a degree at what was University of North London. It was an alternative sort of performing theatre course, which is now I think London Met, and I loved being there because it introduced me to lots of different practitioners, and I started to kind of go, this is kind of where I want to be. It's the weirdest thing for me is that I fell into acting. My family never took me to the theatre. I was in pantos before I got to see a panto. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I get you. Yeah.
culturally, my cultural currency, I've always been on the outside of it, and sort of coming to London and studying, then it was sort of like, oh, okay, I get what this is, and sort of just started to kind of hone my skills, and I did do a couple of episodes of different things. Like I think I was in Holby, I was in I
But you were in Holby. Laura Sadler was in that
yeah,
episode,
I
and Louisa
know.
Bradshaw White. You were
Yeah.
both in Grange
So
Hill.
Laura Sadler, I know she was younger than me, but I grew up with Laura because her mum Sonia used to chaperone me and stuff because she was at the same agency before she went to Sylvia's and stuff. So I had like a history with Laura. And yeah, and so yeah. And then I did Judge John Deed, with an episode of Judge John Deed, and then
Now, can I just stop you? That episode of Judge John Deed, right? I looked at the cast list of that episode, and the people in that were phonamenal, weren't they?
I know.
Obviously, Martin Short and Jenny Seagrove, but then like Leslie Ash and Fraser James and Simon and Donald Sinden. I was looking at thinking, what? I mean, did you get to work with those people? Really, were you sort of like on screen with them?
Yeah, because it was the court case, wasn't it? And Leslie Ash was, yeah. I was part of the jury.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
And I was featured. I was Jenny Penrose or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been incredible. Like,
yeah. And Colin, I can't remember his surname now. It's really bad. Colin
Colin
McFarlane.
McFarlane. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing voiceover artist as well. Did all the Red Bull gives you wings,
Right.
but he was
Wow.
also an amazing director at the time. And I remember becoming friends with him then for a short time. And he was directing something which was called Ella Meets Marilyn, which was written by
Right.
Bonnie Greer. And that was brilliant. Like that was a really strange time. And also the same sort of time where I was like, oh, I'm going to switch agents. But I think it was because I was sort of getting into a space where I was like, I can't really I don't feel like I'm making a living as an actor, and I'm living in London. And so I went and studied, I did a PGC at the Royal Academy of Dance,
Uh,
specializing in dance teaching.
right.
And then I literally got my job before I even left there. So that was kind of me shifting into a new career without knowing it, because I just
Right.
wanted to be able to earn some money
Yeah.
without doing really, mind-numbing call center jobs, which was
Right.
what I
Yeah.
was doing in between.
Right.
Yeah, and I just wanted to do that. I wanted to get a job and get my qualified teaching status and then get back into acting.
Uh-huh.
But I never did.
Right. Now, there is one acting job that we haven't talked about, and
Oh,
I need to talk to you about it
why? Oh my
because
God, what is it?
you were in an episode of Chucklevision,
Yes, I
right?
was.
So
So I can tell you how I got into that.
go on, yeah, go on.
So, so one of the producers on Grange Hill, um, Di May Jones,
Right.
who's an amazing lady, and I don't know, we used to keep in contact for a long, long
Uh-huh.
time. And she was like, she basically said, oh, she's producing this. And I was like, yeah, I really just need some work. Let me come for the audition. And yeah, and then they were like, can you do a Bavarian accent? And I had
Yeah,
no idea what a Bavarian accent was, but I just went for it. And for some reason it was right.
brilliant. I mean, were they were they just as bonkers as you would expect them to be?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you know what? We had a bit of conflict with them, I think, as a Grange Hill cast, because we were at the same hotel they were staying in when when I think we had the last party,
Right. Yeah.
and something happened and they complained about us. I mean, they never knew that when I got that
Ah,
job.
right. Okay.
But yeah, there was something going on anyway. Yeah. And they were, I don't think they really spoke to me, to be
Right.
honest. Like, but it
Yeah.
was like a bit of a cult following, and everyone's like, "Oh, I saw you, what o'clock in the morning on this thing," and I'm like,
Because
"Yeah,
everyone loved the Chuckle Brothers,
yeah," and then they
didn't they?
do,
Like everyone does. But
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah. I actually didn't mind doing that job. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm a Bavarian nurse. I don't even know, just yeah, physical comedy was.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. And one more thing was called Richard the Third, which was like a contemporary
Oh,
version.
I love that.
Yeah, and you played the Lady Anne.
Yeah, I
In
did.
that.
I
I
did.
mean, like my my Shakespeare knowledge is limited. I'll be honest. We did
Mm,
Romeo and Juliet at school. That was pretty much the only sort of Shakespeare we touched on in all my 8 years in high school. That was
yeah.
the only sort of thing. But that must have been great to do, like a contemporary version of
Yeah.
that story as
It
well.
was really cool. So, I met the director, and the producer of it when I was working at a call center in West Norwood, and it was all actors. And yeah, they basically asked me to read for Lady Anne, and I really very scared of Shakespeare.
Right.
Um, I haven't had any classical training. I didn't go to drama school or anything. But I really liked analyzing and just working out things. So just finding out about who she was and her relationship and stuff like that. And
Uh-huh.
we filmed it in Brighton. And it was, yeah, yeah, I really loved their kind of take on it.
Mhm.
And yeah, I enjoyed the fact that it was a filmed version of it as well.
Yeah.
And it just, yeah, it was really cool. And actually since then, later on in life, I've kind of avoided any kind of old school sort of text, but I last year worked on Aristophanes' The Clouds, like like sort of adapting it for a contemporary audience. I wrote some of the contemporary text and like adapted some of it. And I actually think I could be quite good at doing that. But you know, when it's like something that's so out of your comfort
Yeah,
zone, and it takes me a really long time to decipher and work things out, like the
yeah,
language is so old. Um, but actually it's still really accessible, but it just takes a lot of energy and
yeah. So
time to work it out.
in Richard III, did they
Yeah.
still use like the original language then, or was it
Yeah, they
right?
use this, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I
okay.
can't
Like I say, my
remember.
my my knowledge of Shakespeare's limited. I went to to go and see an open air version of Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
And I sat there. I don't know if you've ever seen that episode of The Simpsons where Homer's watching Twin Peaks and he's going, "This is great," and then like the thought in his head said, "I've got no idea what's going on." Like that was me, and that wasn't that long ago. That was like I was in my 40s when I was watching it. I was like, I kind of worked out that there was like a few stories going on, a bit like the Love Boat. There was like three
Yeah.
stories going on, but honestly, I was baffled
I
watching
mean,
it.
a
Like,
lot of people love Midsummer's Night's Dream, but I don't, I'm not a fan. Like I
right,
don't I do like some of Shakespeare,
yeah.
some of his plays. But yeah, I think I think yeah, it
Yeah.
is depends on how it's directed and how it's kind of like it is like yeah.
Yeah. So this is normally the point where I would ask like, what do you do now? And you've already mentioned that
Yeah.
you're a teacher. So do you do Shakespeare in, in your teaching?
No, well, I work in the musical theatre department at the
Right.
Brit School in London, and it's like it's an art school, so there is a theatre department, and they do, you know,
Yeah.
Shakespeare. But basically, yeah, that's what I do. I choreograph and I do sometimes direct some of their shows, but they're mainly musicals. Um, and yeah, so that's where I've worked, and I basically I finished. I'm like in my 20th year, so this was
Wow.
my job coming out of the RAD straight into this department, which has been like a training ground, and I really love it there, and it keeps me fresh. But like I said, you know, trying to step away and do any kind of professional directing is quite difficult,
Yeah.
um, and challenging in
Yeah.
lots of different ways. But yeah, it's an amazing place to work, and I
Yeah.
love
And like, as someone myself who works in education, it's so rewarding, isn't it? Like when
it.
you take a kid who's like, I work in primary. So, but like even then, you've got a kid who's like, I can't do this, and you sit there, you work with it, and you can't, and then all of a sudden, like the light bulb goes on, doesn't it? And you think, oh, you've got it, you've got
Yeah,
it. You know what I
you're
mean?
just impacting and shaping like
Yeah,
so many young people. It's not, I don't think it's a cliche because anyone who's in teaching isn't there because it's a really tough job.
yeah,
And it can take and take and take, but it is just that, you know, that one young person like shifting from being somebody who doesn't have the confidence to suddenly
yeah,
having the confidence, or you know, just yeah, just taking that extra care to give someone a little bit of advice or
mhm,
helping them through something, or you know, and like I'm a tutor as well, so
right,
every 2 years I have a tutor group, and you know, that's a challenging part of it as
yeah,
well, like post 16. But yeah, you know, I don't think I would not ever not teach because I feel like it keeps me fresh and it keeps me young. And yeah, I mean, I'd really admire primary school teachers as well because that's very hardcore, like the energy that you require to do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What, what year group are you? What year group?
So I'm a HLTA.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah, yeah.
I cover PPA. So I do teach classes. So this morning I was in a reception class. This afternoon, I was in year two.
Oh
Tomorrow
gosh.
morning, I'm in reception class. Then I'm out on an afternoon taking year six to a dodgeball tournament. And then I'm on a residential with year six for the rest of the week as
Oh,
well.
that's so,
So, so yeah.
that's amazing.
Talking about energy levels, I've told you I'm putting this episode out online on Saturday. I might be sleeping all day Saturday. So I don't know when this episode's going online. I'll be completely honest. I mean,
That's
but
amazing.
yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just doing that,
I
like,
mean, the
so.
thing is, those young people would just like the impression that you leave on them, and whether they like, I just think the fact is that you're nurturing young people and you're shaping them in ways and making impact in ways we can't ever know. And
Yeah,
like I have people meeting me wherever out and about, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Lorraine, you don't know," and
yeah,
it's like, well, you don't really know, but um, yeah, it's a yeah, it's a an important job.
yeah. I mean, but you said there when you see them when they're older, and you find out that and some of them are just doing amazing things as well, and you just like, it's brilliant. And it's
Yeah.
shout out to all the people in
Or to
education,
yeah.
because the job we're all doing, it's great.
Yeah,
And I'll
it's
and I'll die
a
on the
lot.
hill that the 12 weeks holiday are well and truly warranted. Like,
Yeah, you know what? My husband's a bit of a joker, and he's always just yeah, he's always saying about that. And but you know, he says he wouldn't do it because your work is never done. You're always
yeah,
prepping, you're always
my
planning, always
my answer is, you chose your career, I chose mine. When anyone goes
yeah,
on about the holidays, that's always my thing. Like,
yeah,
but so yeah, so you mentioned earlier on about some of the people you were friends with, Joanna, but you're still in touch with cast members from Grange Hill,
yeah. I mean, not on a regular,
right?
but I guess yeah, we're sort of social media friends
Yeah,
more than anything. And I think Amy's probably the last person I saw, and she's
yeah,
we weren't majorly friends on the program itself because I
hmm,
think she was away and she came back
yeah,
I think during my second year there. So but we're definitely in close proximity in terms of the theatre that she's artistic director of. I'm sure we'll have, a relationship in the future as
yeah.
well. Um, and yeah, so yeah,
Brilliant.
it's one of those things, isn't it? Everyone lives all over all over the
Yeah,
country
uh,
and
people grow up, don't they?
yeah,
That been said many, many times. Like, so, we are sort of coming towards the end of the interview, Lorraine, and I've got
yeah,
the last few questions, are the same questions that I always ask at the end of every
okay,
episode. So, over the last couple of years, there's been talk of a Grange Hill movie in the works. Like, Phil Redmond's has written it. There's other actors from the show are involved in the production side, or been slated to be involved in the production side anyway. What do you think of the idea of a Grange Hill movie?
um well, when I didn't really know about it, and so I sort of looked into it. Um, I think I think it could be. I mean, I don't know. I think it could be a good thing if it kind of is brought up to date,
Uh-huh.
and I guess what they're trying to do is look at how they bring in the children of older characters from Grange Hill. So, I think um. I think if the time is taken to really kind of reflect upon, because I think what happened with Grange Hill was it was a reflection of the area it was set in,
Yeah.
a reflection of the kind of setting and the time and what was going on. And it would be really nice to counterpoint some of those things and still how they're sort of still happening or relevant at this point in time.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it could be really could have great potential to kind of, I don't know, maybe find some, I don't know, hope in within, I don't know, because at the moment it's quite hard, isn't it, to think that 30 years ago or whatever these same things were happening or
Yeah.
even and they're manifesting themselves in different ways and how their kids are going through it and experiencing amongst the backdrop of you know, technology and all these different things. I think
Yeah.
it could be really interesting. You know, I think, yeah, I'm
Well,
sure. And if they are bringing it back, I'm sure people are going to take the time to really make sure it's,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that, I've seen comments online, oh, it'll be woke and it'll be this, and it'll be that. And I think Grange Hill, anyway, maybe not the language, but the thing was incredibly woke. Anyway, the fact that, we had this diverse cast from
mm,
from day one, the cast was really diverse. So that in itself was already a thing
yeah,
anyway. And, the word woke gets banded about a lot, and the meaning of it gets lost as well. I think
yeah,
people just think, I would say woke because I don't necessarily agree with it, or it's this or it's that, you know what I mean? But it was so diverse to begin with anyway. And it, and
yeah,
it showed real things that were happening. I mean, the language, when you see old clips, you probably wouldn't get away with using that
yeah,
type of language now. But it was like that, that Phil Redmond isn't going to let it be something that he doesn't want it to be. Do you know what I mean?
no.
Do you know what I
Because it's
mean?
going to be the legacy of it, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
going to be the thing that's a lasting impression. So I think obviously as time has evolved and language has changed and people's understanding or
Mm-hmm.
how people want to kind of recognize certain issues or you know that's obviously definitely rapidly changed and I'm sure that'll be recognized in it, but like when you really reflect on the storylines that have come up and the issues that have been raised, they've definitely been current and definitely been sort of cutting edge, and that is something that I think he's tried to always do.
Yeah.
As long as kind of I think the perspectives and the lenses that are brought into consideration, I'm sure he will bring people in to kind
Yeah.
of, you know what I mean, look at
Yeah.
what,
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it, yeah, I don't think, yeah, like you said, he's not going to bring something out unless it's kind of interrogated and
Yeah.
definitely meaningful and is going to say something about
Yeah.
important. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you were asked, would we see a return of Carlene Joseph?
I don't think that anyone's going to ask me, but I would say that Carlene's character now would be somebody who'd be like a part of, you know, maybe she would be a teacher, maybe she'd be a lecturer teaching like, you know, Black History
Yeah.
Studies somewhere, like, you know, doing something that's sort of changing people's perspectives on things. Maybe she be a visiting lecturer back at
Yeah.
Grange Hill, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Definitely.
yeah,
Brilliant.
but yeah, I
Brilliant.
don't.
And other than Carlene, who was your favourite character on the programme?
Um, oh, oh
From
dear.
any era, if you watched it those times when you weren't supposed to, or anything like that.
Um, I think Mr. Robson was. I don't
Uh,
know why. I just have a fond memory of him being quite hard, but also being quite,
yeah.
you know, quite a nice
Yeah.
person. Um, and I don't really I would say maybe Alan Cave's character.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. To be honest, I didn't have a massive affection for anyone in particular. Um, but yeah, I think those two
and
perhaps.
and if you couldn't have played Carlene, is there any other character that you would have liked to have played?
Um, I think um Mel's character, because she'd been
Uh,
established quite a long time as
yeah.
Lauren, and um and I think yeah, there was scope there, and that family actually in
Yeah.
itself was something that could have been more established.
Uh-huh.
Because I think the guy who was playing her dad was the guy in Rising Down.
Yeah. Don Warrington.
Yeah, Don
Yeah.
Warrington, and he was lovely actually when I met him.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I think that family could have sort of been more established and prominent in the series. So yeah.
Okay. So the final question then, Lorraine, is why do you think there's still such affection for Grange Hill?
I think because it's a household name. It's part of people's memory of growing up. It anchors them in a certain experience, connects them to a certain time when, I guess things might have felt easier or felt more free or just felt more hopeful. Even though the
Yeah.
storylines in it are quite like, raw and real and, were the things that some of our young people are facing, particularly like in
Yeah.
deprived areas and things. And even, and I think people have fond memories of something that was a constant because it was something that you grew up with. And so, and the storylines were good and it was always around. It's a bit like, yeah, it's a bit like for me, I remember when I was 16 hearing Goldie's Timeless album, or it might have been before then, but it's like something that anchors you in
Yeah.
something that made you feel good, or
Yeah.
that you reminisce about in relation to, like it's all of
Yeah.
those things. And I think, yeah, I think it's one of those sorts of things where people connected to it, and even if you weren't connected to it, you had your mum telling you can't be connected
Yeah.
to it, and it was one of those things where it's like it's edgy and it's a bit like dangerous, but it wasn't really dangerous, it was just informative. And yeah, it's yeah, that's what I think.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, Lorraine, thank
Mm.
you so much for coming on. It's been great talking to you. And do you know what? This is the first one in a while where I haven't had to spend ages chasing the guest. It was literally we got in touch, we agreed, and now we've done it. Like
You know what?
it
I
was
have to
so
do
quick.
that. I have to do you know why? Because if I don't do that, then it's not happening.
Yeah. No, I mean the last few the last few episodes I've put out, literally at the end of every one, I've said it's been a long time coming. We've been in touch for ages, but this was literally, I mean, what was it, 3 weeks
Bish
ago?
bash bosh. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm literally like that. If I'm going to do something, it has to be done and it has to be happening. I am a super busy person, but it's
Brilliant.
not
Well, thank you even more. So, if you're a super busy person, thanks for coming on. It's been great talking to you, and not just your
yeah.
experience on the
No,
program,
thank
but
you.
the
It's been
industry as
really
well.
lovely going down memory lane
Oh
and
no,
and honestly reminding me of how actually amazing that experience was,
yeah,
because you forget and you get bogged down in the everyday, and actually I have to sort of look back. I'm actually going to go on, what is it, ITV
ITVX Premium, you can get it on
yeah,
there. There is another video sharing platform on the internet that you might want. You can get some
okay.
bits on, but the quality isn't as good
Oh,
on that one.
okay.
So ITVX Premium, if you could, you're willing to pay the price,
Pay the pay
you can get
premium.
it there. Like, but no, honestly, I've loved talking to you. It's been brilliant.
I
So
hope it's been okay, and I
thank
don't
you.
know if I divulged too much,
No, no,
but
like I said, that was Carlene's character. So
yeah,
it needed talking about. So
yeah.
yeah, it's been great. So thanks again, and to anyone
Okay.
that's listening, I'll speak to you next time.
All
Cheers.
right. Okay.
Thanks. Bye bye.